You like this talking You like this talking pounds? Well, they're going to be happy to hear that.
Oh man, I talked to my wife, and my wife would just roll her eyes like, "You were listening to Cider Chat, and now you have some wild and crazy idea about what you want to do for Mead, huh?"
Perfect. That's good.
I digress, like Sophia Petrillo on.
That's great.
Oh man.
Well,
sorry, Rhea.
Who knows what's going to happen out of this? Hello, my name is Rhea Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. Bringing us into this here episode 463 of Cider Chat was Eric Depradine of Zydeco Meadery, which is now based in Massachusetts. And you might be thinking, Cider Chat, you're talking about mead. Well, listen, first of all, Eric, who just had me cracking up through most of this entire conversation, has been a long-time listener of Cider Chat, which really caught my attention. Okay, what's going on there? How is Cider Chat getting crossover into mead making? And, of course, it's one of the most obvious reasons. It's all about making wine, using those same type of techniques and looking for that crossover. And he also makes a cider, which is one of my favorite things to do with an apple base and a bit of honey. And he knows his honey. I'm super stoked to talk about that because one of the meads that he has uses what is called knotweed honey. And knotweed is an invasive plant in my area, maybe yours too. But for Eric, it makes this really beautiful, lovely honey, and it's featured in one of his meads. So we'll be getting to that special feature coming up, and that laughter. We were talking about the talking palms, which he's a fan of.
Hi,
Eric. Pleasure to meet you, Eric.
Indeed, Eric. I hope you have some peri pears in your mead.
He's going to talk a little bit about peri pears.
Right.
Yeah, he's a fan of you guys, so do know that there's a big fan base for the talking palms, which we're really happy about. So that tells you a little bit of the crossover of this here podcast into the meadery. But also, we're going to be looking at something else, too, before we get to our main conversation with Eric. I've been looking at, I want to say I'm always looking at
how to find more peri.
That's true, peri pear. But that's not what I was talking about. What I'm really referring to is crossover of different industries and how to really spread our wings in Ciderville and to bring more into our fold as we can. So that's one reason why we're talking to Zydeco Meadery this week and hearing from Eric Depradine and what he's doing there. And also why last week I attended what was called the Flower Expo.
Sounded like a lot of fun.
It was both fun and informative and really specific to my goal of trying to find out if there is a way to broaden the audience for cider and also to see if there are lessons that we can learn or at least feel that we are part of a bigger picture from similar industries. Cannabis, and that's what the Flower Expo is.
I didn't know that, Rhea.
And it was fun.
Indeed, Rhea, I'm sure. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, Perry, it was a hot day, and I know you wanted to be in the orchard.
Right.
Anyways, I was there talking to folks and seeing how they work with sustainability in terms of the waste products from the cannabis industry, because they have a kind of a bad reputation in that way with all the chemicals, which could be similar for apple growers, and also to see what they're doing to work towards that sustainable product. Like we hear often in the cider industry, all the bottles. What happens with the bottles that go out there? I mean, those big 750 ml hunker of a bottles that people are using, is there a way to get them back in so that you're not processing all that glassware? And in the cannabis industry, well, you have lots of disposable product there for the pre-rolls. There's these little plastic things and, plastic. It's just It's just kind of a big yuck factor. And is anybody looking at that, or is it all just about making money as quickly as possible? And I was happy to find out that there is a lot of crossover in intention for sustainability and being resourceful for recycling in the cannabis industry. And I think they're kind of almost catching up to where the cider industry is. So go figure. Sometimes if you just stay in your own lane, you never really get to broaden your reach. And look, Cider Chat is all about bringing more folks into our fold. So it was really cool, and we're going to have a little audio clip from that this week and in the next episode coming up. So I'll be getting to that shortly, and then we'll go into our featured conversation with Eric of Zydeco Meadery. I really, really enjoyed talking to him, and this was so super special for me, because Eric and I have been corresponding a little bit here and there over the past couple of years. And when I heard that he was coming back to Massachusetts and actually landing here with his cidery, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm actually going to be able to get to meet him. And indeed we did. So what happened there was we were supposed to meet halfway where he was getting out of work, and I was going to travel out and was going to be outside, but it was a really rainy day. So I called up my friend, Farmer Phil at Stone Cow Brewery in Barre, Massachusetts. Definitely put that on your bucket list of places to visit, and even more so now because the building that Farmer Phil opened up to me to use to record in was this massive, and I mean massive, post and beam barn that is in the process of the final stages of being built. All the buildings on the property at Stone Cow are all done by the folks right there, the family. And this is a big, big family, I want to say. I mean, not like a ton of people, but they're big-hearted, and they really are very do-it-yourself. And one of the things that they're building that barn for, or actually the only thing they're building that barn for, is cheese production. So evidently it's going to be the largest cheese-making facility in Massachusetts once it is completed. And that's going to be all produced with their own milking cows. They have over 200 milking cows at the farm. So this is, when they say Stone Cow, they mean, yeah, they have cows there. And this is just beautiful news to me in 2025 to hear that a family farm now, in this day and age, is still going back to the roots and bringing really quality products. Not only do they have cheese, they also have ice cream too. And of course, they have their beer, and they have a whole setup for food and an outdoor scene for kids to play in, an outdoor pavilion. It's a really, really cool place. I had Farmer Phil back on season 9 when I had stopped in there, and he brought me on a little wild ATV ride all over the property and into the woods where there had been an old cider mill years and years ago. So kind of, all about creating relationships and doing that crossover, what's happening in the brewing industry and what's happening in the cider industry, how that melts together with wine, with mead, and cannabis. And there's so many other industries to look at and that we can learn from to help our own industry grow and perhaps look at collaboration with others. So I found that really informative, and it was a cool. So that's where we were meeting at. There's going to be a video clip of the actual inside of the building that will be going up on Instagram when this episode goes live, and I'll have it tagged into the show notes at ciderchat.com. You could find that if you're listening to this days, weeks, months, or years later. Just go to the show notes, ciderchat.com, episode 463, and you'll be able to see it there. So that's a little bit about what we're doing this week. And of course, if you don't know, Cider Chat is on its summer schedule, which provides me time to, I said fun in the last episode, but really I'm just kind of like catching up and being able to take the time now to do all the things that I don't get to do when a weekly podcast is being produced, which is definitely a ton of work. And joy. It brings me joy, no doubt, but it's a ton of work. And in the meanwhile, I am getting ready for the upcoming Totally Cider tour to the UK later on this summer. and I'm kind of like conspiring. Okay, it's not really like a conspiracy or anything, but I should say collaborating with Nick at the Black Cat Pub down in the Somerset, England. He's going to be hosting us there for a cider dinner, and I'm just really excited about that because it's different than some of the other tours I led where, it's all kind of like formal up and we're doing Michelin star. This is like the UK cider territory, and it has a totally vibe of its own, and we're going to be embracing that. So, yeah, the UK has grit, and we are here for it. So that's what I'm working on, and just trying to keep the ball rolling forward. Take a little pause here, and when I come back, we're going to be hearing a clip from the apple flower guy. This is someone I met at Flower Expo, and I think he has just a really fun tale to tell. And of course, it all has to do with apples, and now is part of his brand name.
People call me Apple Guy and my company Apple Guy Flowers because early in the Cannabis Control Commission's listening sessions, I would attend consistently and distribute apples to the commissioners as they were crafting our policy that regulates us. My name is Lucas Thayer. My company is Apple Guy Flowers, LLC. I am provisionally licensed for outdoor cultivation in Uxbridge, Massachusetts. I also have products in 3 stores: Green Soul in Cambridge, Patriot Care in Greenfield, and Nova Farms in Attleborough, plus a delivery service, Delivered Inc. out of Clinton, Mass.
Was there a particular apple that you always delivered?
I like Gala because they're small, crisp, good long shelf life, and it's just a cool name for an apple.
And what was your idea around bringing an apple versus any other kind of fruit?
I live in an apple-dense town. The town that I live in has more apples per square mile than any other town in Massachusetts. So it just made sense for me as an available product. Thank you. Appreciate it.
While Lucas was walking around when I met him, he actually didn't have cannabis products in his hand. He was walking around selling strawberries to people. Yeah, he was selling fruit, and he had a big vendor spot selling all the different fruits from his farm. So obviously, they're not just providing cannabis to dispensaries, they are also full-on farmers. So do you see the crossover? It's happening, and really, it is everywhere. Walking through the orchards. Up next is our featured conversation with the founder of Zydeco Meadery. You're going to be first hearing me kind of, really loving the fact that I finally get to meet somebody that I've been only corresponding to online. And also the excitement in my voice about meeting somebody from a similar yet different type of fermentation. And yes, he definitely changed my mind about meads. And I'm hoping he's going to be changing yours too. Making this a very fine time to grab a glass and join this chat with Eric Depradine, the founder and fermenter at Zydeco Meadery, based in North Attleborough, Massachusetts. Eric, so nice to see you in person after all these years that we've been kind of conversing. I remember, I don't know, it seems like, how many years ago was it that we kind of connected online?
I think it was back in 2022.
A lot has happened in between now and then. You caught my eye, Zydeco Meadery. You were fermenting and working with a product that I adore, which is honey, having made a lot of cider. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of cider. And then I know that some things have changed. You were out in the Midwest, and now you're on the East Coast. We're going to get to that, but let's first talk about this journey to Zydeco. Where did you get that spark to start fermenting?
Well, it all started when I was a high school teenager at Latin Academy, which is a college prep high school in Boston, Massachusetts. I wanted to do a science experiment using sugarcane juice. And I had to get special permission from the dean of science, and my high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Eaton, helped me navigate the bureaucracy, getting special permission for that science experiment when I was a junior. So the idea of fermenting something, be it fruit juice or be it diluted molasses, or in this case, honey, it's been there for a while, since my days as a high school student. And I ended up going to Louisiana for school. I graduated from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, so I am a proud Raging Cajun. And I graduated at first with a history bachelor's degree and Francophone studies in '06, and had the crazy idea to go back to school and get a chemistry bachelor's degree, and I finished that in '08. And that provided me with the basic knowledge of fermentation and how to convert juice or diluted honey to finished alcohol. So that gave me a little bit of the scientific, technical background. But that spark has always been there since I was a student at Boston Latin Academy to get into this.
Nice. Why mead?
My wife and I drank a lot of German varietal wines in college, and it was usually Riesling or Gewürztraminer and pecan pie. And from there, we went on a honeymoon trip to the greater Seattle, Washington area, and we're like, oh, this would be great. Let's move here. We realized it's too expensive to live in Washington State. So we were like, well, we want to continue with wine, but we want to do it in Louisiana. Well, you can't grow European varietal grapes in Louisiana because of the climate and because of a couple of insect pests. But Louisiana has an abundance of honey. And we fortunately lived in Lafayette, Louisiana, which has a lot of beekeepers and a lot of beekeepers that migrate to different farms throughout the United States overwinter their beehives in southern Louisiana. So we had an overabundance of cheap honey. And I think my wife suggested to me, why don't you start making mead? And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds great, because I'm the kind of husband that listens to his wife. And
Good idea.
yeah, sometimes she bought me a book off of Amazon, The Complete Mead Maker, and that was my go-to book on how to get into this. And we started playing around with different honeys, different wildflower honeys from different parts of southern and central Louisiana. And we thought we could make a business of it, like what we saw people do in Washington State. And then we started combining fruits, and we found a local fruit orchard, Romero's Fruit Orchard in Coteau, Louisiana, in Iberia Parish. And we developed a friendship with Mr. Romero and his wife. And they own a small little 20-acre farm, 10 acres devoted towards fruit, the other 10 devoted to the wife's cattle. She owns the cattle, he owns the trees. We would go there periodically throughout the year, harvest oranges, harvest blackberries, Asian pears, and we'd bring it back to Opelousas, where we lived 40 miles north. And Opelousas is the home and birthplace of Zydeco music. So that's where the name Zydeco came from, because the idea was to open up this Zydeco-themed meadery in the town of Opelousas, Louisiana. But unfortunately, we couldn't do that because I ended up taking a job in Kansas City. But we had the name, and the concept and the idea was based in Opelousas, and we decided to carry that north to Kansas City, Missouri.
Wow. In
2015. That's when we left South Louisiana.
And I'm looking at the bottles here. Eric and I are meeting in this big giant barn right now that's under repair, but we have this perfect situation of the light coming in from the window and glistening on these beautiful 750 ml bottles that have all these different like colored hues, you know. When I see that, I always feel like greatness in the bottle. It's like I'm getting thirsty just looking at it. But I want to mention the Zydeco Meadery name and just the label itself. It's a beautiful font. Let's give a shout out to the artist on that.
Mary Teichman of Chester, Vermont, designed our labels. I always asked her to do our calligraphy, and she'll do special commissions for really anyone, to be honest with you. I've had her commission work for my family over the past 16 years. So her last name is spelled Teichman. She has a website. Check her out. Really great person.
Yeah. Now looks like there's a coat of arms or something on that. Is that true?
Yes, the coat of arms that's my family coat of arms. My wife and I, when we first got married, we went to see Lucy's Legacy at the Houston Museum of Natural History. And in the gift shop, there were a series of different Ethiopian Orthodox crosses that you could select from if you wanted to purchase it. So we purchased one, and my wife said, hey, again, husband listening to wife, this is really cool. I like this one. And I said, well, do you want me to make a coat of arms? Yeah, that sounds great, husband. Go ahead and do it. So that's what we ended up doing. We ended up using that Ethiopian Orthodox cross that we purchased at the museum in Houston.
Yeah.
And it's basically on everything that deals with the winery and some other artwork that we have in our home. And that's how
it came to be.
That's how it came to be.
It's really nice. It has a nice presentation. It's a rich label. It's simple, but it's really rich. Well done.
I got the idea because we used to drink so many German varietal wines. The German wine labels are pretty simple. They always have this striking calligraphy, and there may be some sort of coat of arms on it. So I just took that idea and ran with it.
Yeah, and run you did. So you have this background now with a little bit of fermenting. You knew where the honey was there. Was it just kind of taking a course, or where was the actual skill set that came about to do this?
Well, the book, The Complete Mead Maker, and I used a lot of that when I lived in Opelousas, Louisiana. But when we moved to Kansas City, I was at work one time, and I said, you know what? Are there any places in the Kansas City, Missouri area where I could expand my winemaking knowledge? There were two options. I could either go back to school and get a bachelor's of enology at the University of Missouri main campus. I didn't want another bachelor's, so that option was, I disregarded that option. But there was a community college located outside of Kansas City in the small town of Wamego, Kansas. And they offered two options. You can get a viticulture certificate or an enology certificate. The classes were offered on the weekends. They weren't very expensive. And since I didn't want to use financial aid, I just paid cash for my classes. And I began taking classes there, I want to say January of 17, and finished the certificate program April or May of 20. It was an awesome program. The instructors there, really patient, extremely knowledgeable, and they focused a lot on Franco-American hybrid grapes, trying to show the local folks in Kansas. They have people that travel all the way from Nebraska, that travel 3 hours south to Wamego. You even have folks that live in Oklahoma that will drive up. And their goal is to show that agriculture doesn't have to be solely soybeans and corn. You can be a small farmer, you can have your commodity crops, but you can also have something on the side like grapes, that if you're patient and you're willing to wait 4 to 5 years, you can make a value-added product. And that can spin off into a whole bunch of other things that can help build the agritourism community within your county. And the folks at the winery at Highland Community College, Scott and Candace and Nicole, and the former instructors, Alec Trivedi, he owns a winery now over in Lawrence, Kansas. That's what they did. That's what they have proven. You can be a small farmer, or you can be a large farmer, but you can also branch off into other things. It doesn't have to be solely corn and soybeans. And they have a beautiful program over there where you can take these classes. There's a laboratory. There's an incubator for startup wineries. And that's how I was able to start the business, using their winery incubator program in 2020. And we stayed there for about 3 years and made a lot of magic over there. So
I have seen some of the photos that you've posted with your kids helping you, And
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
they always look happy to me, like they're having a good time.
Sometimes that happiness is staged. Sometimes it is natural.
Although we have teenagers. What are you going
Yes.
to do?
Yeah. My
Tweens.
kids have been involved with making wine or making some kind of fermented product since I want to say Zachary was maybe 8 months old
Wow.
when I made my first batch of strawberry mead.
Very cool.
They are my part-time employees. So, and my wife. But the kids, if the kids weren't here in New England with me, there would be no meadery. There would be no way I could have bottled
I see.
the 300 gallons that we have in North Attleborough without those two kids.
My
And
goodness, wow.
they know I'm extremely dependent upon them, and they make sure I pay them in very good lunches and dinners.
I'm sure you do.
So, yeah.
Your sense of humor, I think, really carries it through because it's stressful doing that with a family and trying to make a go of it. Not everybody knows about mead.
That is so correct, Rio.
I haven't tasted your meads. I know we're going to shortly. Are they dry?
We used to make dry meads. The ones in Massachusetts are semi-sweet. Our Yankee Heritage Cider, which is the apple raisin, our Trinidadian grape mead, and our show mead are all semi-sweet. And our carbonated hibiscus mead is sweet. We used to make dry meads, but they didn't sell as quickly.
Interesting. Huh.
People who drink with dry wines have a perception of mead being as sweet and sugary as maple syrup.
Yeah.
And it can be, but ours are not.
Okay.
So trying to dispel negative perceptions, even after trying to dry mead, you would still have people telling me, oh, I'm still perceiving some sugar in there. And I'm like, well, yes, honey is a complex sugar. Not all sugars can be fermented by Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So you're going to taste a little something sweet, even though it's dry. But if you put a hydrometer in my wines, you'll see that there's no fermentable sugar in it. But if you don't remember that stuff from high school chemistry, you're not going to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only so much explaining I can do, or my wife could do. So we just decided we're going to focus on semi-sweet to sweet wines because that tended to sell better in Kansas. We are hoping it does the same here in Massachusetts.
Now, you had this great source of honey down in Louisiana. What was it like in Kansas? And now what are you doing here in Massachusetts?
Well, when we were in Louisiana, we used to buy honey from small scale beekeepers. Even when we were in Kansas, I would actually drive to Massachusetts from the winery in Kansas.
Wow.
For a couple reasons. My grandmother is 98, and we would come here with a U-Haul trailer on the back of the pickup truck, and we would buy our supplies from a wine supply, one of the largest wine supply businesses in New England on the East Coast, called Mustel Grape Company, located in Hartford, Connecticut. So we would buy our bottles, we'd buy our cork, we'd buy our caps, and we'd load up the U-Haul trailer with that. Go see my grandmother at the nursing home in Dorchester, and then stop in Billerica, Massachusetts, north of Boston, and buy our honey. Now, Crystal Honey in Billerica has a whole variety of honey, but they also have Louisiana wildflower honey because their bees overwinter in Avoyelles Parish, Louisiana. So our Carnival Rose and our Bayou Soleil have Louisiana wildflower honey from Avoyelles Parish, Louisiana. Our Yankee Heritage Cider and our Atlantic Creole have Massachusetts knotweed. So even though we had a business in Kansas, we were still able to use New England and Louisiana products in the bottle. I know it's nuts.
That feels complicated. I mean, to run a business, how does that work as a business model? I guess it makes sense if you can't get it anywhere else. You got to get it from somewhere.
Yeah, and it set us apart from other people who were selling wines at the farmers markets in suburban Kansas City or in Wichita, Kansas, because many people were pleasantly surprised. Was it a lot? Yes. Is it something I recommend people doing? No. But at the time, it made sense because I was able to kill many birds with one stone.
Yeah.
I could come to Massachusetts, I could see my grandmother, I can get my supplies, I can take it back, and then I could play around with it at the incubator in Guamico. And it worked.
Yeah. Well, you're pretty,
Nuts.
driven. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. But wow. Now, let's kind of bring folks up to date. So you are now here on the East Coast. You've moved from Kansas City. You're in Connecticut, but your meadery is in Massachusetts.
North Attleborough, Massachusetts, yep. The reason why that is the way it is because Massachusetts has a huge problem with a lack of housing. The cost of housing in Massachusetts is astronomical.
That's true.
And did I want to move to Connecticut? No. But it's actually a good thing because the town that we live in has great high schools. And as a parent of 2 teenagers, that's really important.
Yeah.
So sacrificing and putting miles on my truck is worth it if I know my kids have an access to a good vocational high school and a good college preparatory high school, and I don't have to pay tuition. So I'll just give my money to the gas station. It's okay.
Yeah. How is the meadery set up? What is the production site looking like?
Well, our meadery is located in the Emerald Square Mall. We're located on the 3rd floor in the former Subway restaurant. Subway restaurant wasn't operating for about 5 years. So we took the area where they would do a lot of this, making the bread and keeping storage. That's our production area. And the front of the house, we don't use it. We just use it for storage.
So it's not a tasting room or anything.
No, we're not open to the public.
And so how do folks get your product?
One of 2 ways. They can go on vinoshipper.com and they can order it. Or if you live in Eastern Massachusetts, you can visit Inman Square Wines in Cambridge, Massachusetts, down the street from Harvard University, or Wines and More in Wareham, Massachusetts, or Mansfield, Massachusetts. And I have those 3 liquor stores located on my website with the Google Map directions.
Yeah, that makes it easy. Now, this is called Cider Chat. You make mead, but I know that you're a listener of Cider Chat. There are mead podcasts out there. What is the draw to Cider Chat for you?
You just have a large library. And when I was at work looking at analytical reports, I just listened to you and I just liked your voice. And I'm like, I can get a whole bunch of ideas from these other cider producers.
You're doing co-ferment, so...
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's a co-ferment of honey and various fruits. And your podcast gave me a lot of ideas. Like I found out about the Franklin County Cider Days, the first weekend of November. I learned about quince and have this idea where I want to take Asian pears or European Perry pears and combine it with quince with some local wildflower honey. My wife has told me in very plain terms, she is not trying to grind apples, pears, or quince again, because we used to buy fruit from Ian over in, I think he was the head of the horticulture department at Cornell University.
Oh, yeah, Ian. I've had him on the podcast.
I learned about Ian from you.
Oh,
and I bought a crap load of fruit from him 2 years in a row.
Oh my gosh.
And Ian and his wife were really kind to my kids and I when we went over there, and we bought a whole...
Like a bin?
We bought a whole bin of apples, put that on the back of a truck, and took it back to Kansas and grinded the fruit and pressed it. And it was from him talking about the Spanish cider apples from Asturias in Spain. We used to make a dry apple mead called Kansas Cider. And the last version we made, Ian's daughter let us pick more Spanish apples than I don't think her father would have appreciated.
Wow. That's cool.
We had a guy from Germany who came to our table at the Mission, Kansas farmers market. And he said, Eric, the apple mead, the Kansas cider reminded him of drinking hard apple cider in Germany when he was a young man. This is a guy in his 60s.
Wow.
So I picked up a lot of education from your guest on Cider Chat. So this is a very educational place to be.
Awesome. I love that. That's good for me to know and the listeners out there too, because I think it does throw a broad reach out into the world. And, co-ferments are happening all over the map with winemakers, with cider makers, and mead makers. Well, let's try some of your product here. What should we go through first here?
We are going to do the apple raisin mead. This is called Yankee Heritage Cider. If you're in Kansas, you probably knew this as New England Cider. And this is actually inspired by...
Look at that color. Beautiful.
A closed apple cidery located in western Massachusetts called Bear Swamp. Mm-hmm. My mom and I traveled to Cider Days back in 2020, and we visited Bear Swamp, and we had their colonial New England style hard cider. Mm. And it's made with a combination of aromatic and, this version is made with aromatic and bittersweet apples, raisins, and Massachusetts knotweed honey, which has a strong molasses-like flavor.
My goodness. Well, I just want to say cheers. Cheers, Eric. Nice to meet you.
Same here. Cheers.
That is tasty. Deceptively smooth. What kind of ABV are we talking about here, buddy?
About 10.5.
Oh, that's all, huh? Okay. Mm-hmm. Woo, boy, yeah. I wouldn't know that. That goes down like, so soft. Now, just for listeners to know, the color here, how would you describe that?
It's almost amber-like.
Super crystal clear, 10%. Oh, just the taste, the profile. You get that honey overture. Now, the fact that you mentioned Bear Swamp, which sadly has closed their shop. He was a cider maker there. A beautiful site in Ashfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, he had a beautiful orchard. Mm. I remember my mom and I, we walked up to the top of the mountain because the production area is down in like a little valley. We walked up there and we almost got blown away. It was so windy that Sunday morning. But yeah, they have a beautiful setup, man. Yeah, some nice folks.
Yeah, really nice. I'm getting almost like a little cherry. I'm wondering if that's like the raisins. What? Mm-hmm. Mm.
It's based according to the family. They said they found the recipe in a book printed in the colonial era. Mm-hmm. And they said colonists would make a stronger cider by adding brown sugar, because Massachusetts had an abundance of brown sugar from its trade in the Caribbean. Mm. And they threw in some raisins, I guess, to be fancy, along with their bittersweet apple juice.
Yep.
But we used to get our apple juice from Ian over in New York, but this time around we used a British bittersweet concentrate, partly because we don't have the space and we don't have the time to grind apples inside of the mall. It was different when we were in Kansas, when we had abundant space, but this time my wife had suggested just use the British bittersweet concentrate. And I think it worked out well.
Yeah, it did. Really super smooth, and you have a lot of complexity there. Yeah, it even has like a little bit of like that astringency that I would get from a really strong, bittersweet. It's really right there.
I would say it's about 25% bittersweet apples. Mm-hmm. And then you get a little bit of tannin from the raisins.
Yeah, a little bit of everything in that glass. It does. I've had the cider that you were talking about that Bear Swamp made, but this tastes nothing like that. This is an entity unto itself. And it really, imagine like colonists drinking something like this, because we've all done variations of this recipe that you have bottled here. No wonder that they were like standing up against the monarch and saying, hell no, you sit around and you have a 10% glass of this, maybe 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, and a revolution will end up happening.
Yeah.
And then come to find out, I didn't realize Worcester County, I didn't realize how big hard cider production was in Massachusetts. And Worcester County was the largest producer of apples and or hard cider in colonial Massachusetts. So Being that I grew up here, I wanted to pay homage to my state, and I hope I have achieved it in this bottle.
Well, I think you have. Yeah, this had been a prize for anybody to serve back in the day and to bring it to the future. So folks out there in Ciderville listening, you know, that use of raisins, I'm wondering, what did you do with yeast? What was the situation here?
Oh, man. One of my winery instructors, Nicole from Kansas, suggested using a strain of yeast from an artist, which is a wine yeast company, and plus they make enzymes and stuff. They're based in California. And I was listening to a Mead podcast, and one of the guests said he just uses one yeast for all his products. Using a different yeast for each different product, it can be problematic because you're dealing with a different animal in every vat. So we just use, I forget the name. Oh, it's an artist WS. That's what it's called. And the reason why we use it is because our hibiscus mead can be very temperamental to ferment to completion. And that strain of Saccharomyces cerevisiae can deal with very acidic, less than favorable conditions. And hibiscus, because it has so much acidity, it will make your pH of your must fall below 3 on the pH scale. And an artist WS is really good at surviving those conditions. Now, you will have a slow fermentation, but the other wines, I don't have that issue when I use WS. It'll ferment in like maybe 7 to 10 days. Mm-hmm. But yeah, our hibiscus mead was our signature mead in Kansas. That was my grandmother's recipe. Well, it is my grandmother's recipe.
I love that. So you really kind of pulling in all the recipes from all over.
I'm telling you, that's what happens when you have a bachelor's degree in history. You tend to research too much.
No, I think you're doing it just right. My goodness. So with mead, is there wild ferment at all?
You can, but I don't do wild ferments because
Unpredictable.
it can be unpredictable.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in Belgium and you've been in the same farmhouse, or your family's had the same farmhouse for 500 years, and you have your own family brand of yeast, by all means, because you can get some really good flavors like alambic and stuff if you're making a fruit beer. But I just go with the commercial varietal of yeast. That's how we do it in my family.
Yeah, you get it going. You got to get it in the bottle. You got to get it out the door into the hands of the folks. What is your production size?
One time we made 900 gallons when we were in Kansas, but this year we only did 300. So I would say about a little bit less than half is the hibiscus, and then the remainder is divided between the apple, the grape, and the show mead. Mm-hmm. We have hopes to expand production, but we want to see in Massachusetts at the farmers markets how well it sells. And if it does well, perhaps we'll increase our production size next year in 26. But right now we're hovering around 300, 350 gallons.
When people are selling cider, it used to be folks are like, well, what is cider? Is this hard cider? What kind of questions do you get when people are coming up to your booth at like the farmer's market or something?
Is it overly sweet? Because people think...
terrified of.
Yes. And it's amazing. The same people who say they don't like sweet wines are the same folks that would drink a margarita.
Well, there is salt on the glass. So.
You know, yeah. I guess the salt balances out all this high fructose corn syrup in the mixes.
Right.
But that is our biggest challenge, dealing with people's negative perceptions of mead. Because they think all mead tastes the same. They don't realize that their honey has its own terroir, just like apples. Apples grown in Massachusetts don't taste like apples in New York.
Right.
And they don't taste like apples in Lafayette County, Missouri, east of Kansas City. All honey is going to taste different because bees are going to pollinate whatever they have within a 2-mile radius of their hive box. And all of that's going to play a role in what's inside that bottle. And trying to convey that information to potential customers within a few minutes can be difficult. That's why we pour samples at farmers markets so we can dispel the negative perceptions. And once they taste it, they're like, oh my gosh, I never had anything that tastes like this before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I like about it, and this is what I really want listeners out there to hear, is sometimes when you've had a mead or this kind of like classic New England style that you're doing here with the raisins and whatnot, you could get this like really sweet and kind of goes up into your cheekbones and you're like, eat, you know, like that's what people are afraid of. This is nothing like that. It's smooth. I'm thinking, damn, this would be so good with like a cheese plate, or I would even have it with a freaking burger. You know? I mean, that little bittersweet in there and that honey and the raisin, just a wee bit that you're getting that.
Rhea, if your listeners go to the grocery store, buy a lamb shoulder steak, season it with some red pepper, some black pepper, some salt. Take a small 8-inch cast iron pan, heat it up real good on your gas stove, brown it for a couple minutes on each side, add a little bit of onions, add some cremini mushrooms, and have a sweet potato in the oven in the meantime. Take it out, sit down, go to town with Yankee Heritage Cider. You will not be disappointed.
Perfection. Yeah. And you know damn well that I'm going to be doing that. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Ask me how I know, because that's how my wife and I do it at home.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
a lamb shoulder steak. Real inexpensive, real simple.
A lot of folks don't think about lamb, but it's such a nice compliment to a lot of these products here. Yeah, and I love lamb personally. Yeah.
Easier on the stomach, too.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So tell me about these other ones.
Bayou Soleil, that is a tribute to my lovely wife, Deandra Depradine, and her love of German varietal wines. It has Trinidadian grapes, which is the granddaughter of Gewürztraminer from Germany. And normally Gewürztraminer grapes have a spicy characteristic. Trinidad grapes have a little bit of spiciness, but it's heavy on the citrus. And my wife used to like drinking Gewürztraminer wines in college, and in Southwest Louisiana, particularly Iberia, St. Martin, Lafayette, and Southern St. Landry Parish, nothing but orange groves on people's back 10 acres. So that's our tribute to Mr. Romero. He was the former president of the Louisiana Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. He and his brother own 40 acres. He owns 20. His brother and sister-in-law own the other 20. Huge orange and citrus fruit operation, along with other fruits, in Coteau, Louisiana. So Bayou Soleil is a tribute to her and her love of German varietal wines, and a tribute to the citrus growers of South Central Louisiana.
You're a smart man naming the bottle after your wife here. How could she deny you, like, moving forward with Zydeco? I see where you're going with this, Eric. You're kind of like, but honey, we had the Bayou Soleil. That's your brand bottle, right?
Yep.
But how cool. Now, this is a total different color variation here. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, this has more of a golden color, hence the name.
Like a hay.
Bayou Soleil, which in Creole French means sun river or golden river or sunshine river. If you like your wine with heavy citrus notes.
Ooh, that is nice and smooth. Damn, you are hitting it, buddy. Again, 10%?
That's 12.
12,
I think
okay.
12 or 12 and a half. But we became familiar with Trinidad grapes when I was doing coursework at Highland Community College in Wamego, Kansas. And Scott and Candace have, I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 acres of Trinidad grapes for the college.
Wow, that's nice.
And that's how we became familiar with it. And Scott and Candace sold me my first set of Trinidad grapes back in 2021. And the kids and I picked it, processed the fruit, and that's how we came.
It's a little bit like honeysuckle.
And the folks over at Crystal Honey in Billerica, Massachusetts, they overwinter their bees in Avoyelles Parish, which is about 50 miles north of Lafayette, Louisiana on I-49 in a small town called Bunkie. And that's what we use. And So it's a good combination of a lot of Louisiana-like things. You got the honey from that part of the state. You have the citrus notes, and comes all together. Put it in a bottle.
And super balanced. You put it all together, it comes in a bottle, and what you're getting in the bottle is this like wine-like experience, but not. You know it's something other than that. And it's interesting because wine sometimes will really give me a heady, like, I could almost feel like my cheeks are kind of like dropping down and I get sleepy. This is not. This is lifting me up. This is like that lift I get with drinking a little bit of tequila. And that's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
That's a good thing, you know?
Yeah, that was Bayou Soleil is a fun wine to make, and Yankee Heritage Cider, but I had no trouble making that.
No, I bet. Is there a flagship for you in your product?
The Carnival Rose, and there's a story behind that. We took my grandmother's recipe for a beverage called Sorrel, Sorrel, and if you go to English-speaking Caribbean islands, that everyone's mom and grandma has a variation of that beverage. What they do, they take fresh or dried hibiscus flowers, they take some warm spices, they take ginger root, they may put in some orange peel, and they'll boil it. Once it cools, after adding some cane sugar, they bottle it up, put it in the fridge, and that's the celebratory drink for Christmas. Because the flowers are harvested during December, during the month of December, late November. And my grandmother came to this country in 73 with my mom and her siblings, and I learned how to make it from them.
From where?
They're from Trinidad and Tobago. So this is a Trinidadian version of that hibiscus beverage. It's mainly made at home, but our largest brewery, Carib, makes a hibiscus-inspired beer. And there are other small alcohol manufacturers on the island of Trinidad and some of the other islands like Grenada and Barbados and Jamaica that make variations of that same beverage. If you're not familiar with Caribbean food or West Indian food, as we would say, if you go to Mexican restaurants, Mexicans have something called flor de Jamaica or Jamaica flower. And if you go there and you order your tacos and your quesadillas, the owner usually has a container with a dark red liquid in it. It's the same thing like Sorrel. It's a hibiscus-based beverage. And it comes from West Africa. It came to the Americas via the transatlantic slave trade. And every place where West Africans lived, they had this drink. In the United States, the flowers can't grow beyond Florida and Louisiana because you go too far north, it just gets too cold. So African Americans have their own version of a red celebratory drink in the form of strawberries. They'd make a strawberry flavored beverage, and you would drink that on Juneteenth. And in the Caribbean, for Emancipation Day, hibiscus-based drinks are passed around on Emancipation Day, which I believe in the Caribbean is January 1st. In many English-speaking islands. I don't remember what the day is on the French-speaking islands. So that's my grandmother's recipe. We substituted the cane sugar and added honey, Louisiana wildflower honey. And we wanted to be fancy, and we carbonated it.
Oh.
So there's some bubbles.
Oh, so you have a crown cap on that. All the other ones are all cork.
Yep.
Yep.
All the other ones have a colmated cork. This one has a crown cap. And this is a pain in the neck to make for a number of reasons, because we can't use our regular bottling equipment when we are bottling our carbonated mead because it's bottled under pressure. So my son, the smart 14-year-old that he is, wants me to invest in some equipment from Italy to help speed the process up because it takes us much longer to do this carbonated mead than the still meads.
What kind of equipment? Let's geek out on the equipment here a little bit.
He wants me to order a product from Zambelli where you can retain your carbon dioxide and bottle 5 bottles at the same time. Instead of we use a counter pressure bottle filler. This does the same thing, but you can set 5 bottles up and you can bottle at a much faster speed. It takes us 4 hours to bottle 25 gallons. So it took us 5 Saturdays to bottle the 126 gallons we have at the winery. And when you're dealing with a 12 and a 14-year-old who don't like giving up their Saturdays naturally, we can do 100 gallons in maybe 5-6 hours if they're still and are not carbonated. When you add CO2, that slows it down. So I have compromised with my kids. They can watch movies on their cell phone or tablets while bottling the carbonated mead because it's so much slower, because it takes me about a minute or a half to fill each bottle. So they can be entertained while I'm filling the bottle, and then my son puts the cap on, and my daughter is in charge of quality control. She applies the labels and makes sure the labels are on there correctly and wipes the bottles clean before she puts it in the box. So those kids, if they ever want to open up a winery or go into the wine,
everything.
Yeah, they know.
That's great. I mean, that's a good skill set to have in my mind, but
It is, especially if you own a little small orchard.
Now, once you open that bottle, how long would it last since it's like carbonated? Because I would think the other ones could last,
Oh yeah, you can put that in the fridge. You can put the still meads you could put those in the fridge for several days.
Yeah.
Probably 5-6 days. If you're gonna open up Carnival Rose, you can drink it anytime you want, but like the 4th of July, or if you have folks over for the holidays, and that's when it really sold in Kansas, because people like mulled wine for the holidays. So I had a couple ladies in Wamego who would buy it during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday, and if you have a fire pit, you sit in your backyard, open up a bottle of hibiscus mead, and enjoy the company of family and friends around the fire pit.
And you said that this would be drunk on Juneteenth?
Juneteenth or Emancipation Day in the Caribbean.
Right.
Or also Christmas. Because everyone's grandmother, you go to your grandparents' house for the holidays, there would be a non-alcoholic version for the kids, and then somebody's aunt or uncle would add white rum to grandma's version, but that would be in a separate 1-gallon container for the aunts and uncles to drink.
Right on, yeah.
Separate of the kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the label itself is really different, too. All the other ones have like a white background, but this one it looks like it's a brown bottle. Is that right? And the label is like the shiny, metallic, beautiful, rich red, kind of like a Christmassy kind of red that you would see. It really stands out on the shelf in that way. And I just love the name, Carnival Rose.
Trinidad's known for its carnival. In the United States, we call it Mardi Gras.
Right on.
So it's the same thing. And one of my grandfathers, my deceased grandfather, one of his favorite Calypsonians is a lady named Calypso Rose. So Calypso Rose is a real special lady because she was the first female Calypsonian. And music was segregated.
What does that mean, Calypsonian?
She is a musical artist who produces Calypso music in Trinidad and Tobago.
Got it, yeah.
And I think she started off in the 1960s. And she faced a lot of sexism because Calypso singers were traditionally men. So she was entering a male space, and she caught a lot of hell for it as a young woman in Trinidad back in the 1960s, because that wasn't something you did. And
you were saying it was also very segregated, too.
Well, yeah.
That tied into being a woman and then person of color, right?
Yeah, Trinidad is interesting because the population is like 40% West African or people of West African descent. And then you have another 40 or 45% of people who come from a region of India now called Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. They speak a version of Hindi called Bhojpuri, Bhojpuri. And the British brought East Indians to the Caribbean and some Pacific islands like Fiji and South Africa to cut sugarcane after slavery was abolished in 1838. So in my household, our foods are different than other Caribbean islanders or Caribbean American households because we eat a lot of Indian inspired dishes. So we make a lot of flatbreads in my household. We eat a lot of curries. Our music, we listen to a lot of Hindi music, we appreciate a lot of Hindi language music and Hindi language movies, and vice versa, because a lot of people in the Indo-Caribbean community can cook West African-based foods just as well as we can cook their Indian-based foods. And we eat a lot of Chinese food in my house, but we cook our Chinese food because there's a huge Chinese Trinidadian community.
Wow.
So we do a lot of sharing.
I'm coming over for dinner. I mean, we should have met at your place. Wait a minute. Wait, my stomach's starting to growl on that. Damn. All my favorite foods. Whenever I fly, I always order the Hindi meal. When I'm going international, this is a little tip for everybody out in Ciderville. Because when you're on the plane, one, it's like a clean food to me on a plane, and it gets served first. So I get my meal first, and then I get to get up and do everything and then sleep the rest of the transcontinental flights. But I always go for a Hindi meal. I can't deny it. It's always like fantastic food to have on the plane.
Yep.
Don't share that, Ciderville. I might cut this out. That's my little travel hack.
Yeah.
Shall we crack this open here? Because I want to have this with you. This just sounds like absolutely delicious.
Glad it didn't come like a volcano out of the bottom.
Ooh, that is exciting. What a beautiful color. It looks like a cranberry from the cranberry bogs of Massachusetts.
Southeastern Massachusetts.
Yeah, look at that.
It does have cranberry-like flavors from the hibiscus flowers that we've had. This is 7 degrees Brix, whereas the other 3 are all 3 degrees Brix. So it has twice the amount of honey in it. It has the hibiscus flowers that have been reconstituted and various spices.
I see how this would be a really lovely holiday drink. Has that nice light carbonation. The spices are really coming through, but they're subtle. The thing when you're adding a lot of different properties into anything is doing that balance. And what I could see from your skill is that you're really able to balance everything from the first bottle all the way through the Carnival Rose. So you're getting all these different layers all in one, and it's not an easy thing to do. So well done for that. That is a hard practice to get both the overtures of the spices, the honey.
Our Carnival Rose took a lot of trial and error. A lot of trials to get that right. Because I'm living in Southwest Louisiana, calling my grandmother at my aunt's house when she's 91, and I'm trying to get her to describe what she puts in this thing. And anyone who has a grandma knows, grandmas don't measure anything. It's all by sight.
Yeah, I love that way.
And whatever they feel, they'll base the quantity based on whatever's in their palm. And trying to get my grandmother to give me some straight measurements that I could make a small batch and then upscale it. Oh my goodness. It took countless phone calls to my aunt in Massachusetts, talking to my grandmother and my other aunt, my grandfather's baby sister in Brooklyn, New York, she's in her late 70s, talking to her on the phone and getting her opinion and stuff. But we figured it out.
You did figure it out, and you have something that's super unique.
Yeah, I think we might be the only people in the United States carbonating hibiscus mead. You can normally find it still, but I don't think you could find it carbonated.
That is delicious.
The kids and I started the hibiscus in October. We didn't bottle it until March. And it had to sit. And that's the thing with hibiscus meads, at least with ours. It really has to set because hibiscus has a lot of polyphenols in it, and those polyphenols will cloud the liquid. And you can use enzymes. We don't use bentonite. We recognize bentonite has a place, but bentonite can strip the aroma from the final product. Yeah. If you're making 10,000 gallons of this stuff, go ahead and use your bentonite. Or if you just making a 5 or 10 gallon batch for you and your extended relatives, go ahead and use bentonite. But we found if you have patience, you can get all of those polyphenols to clump together. Eventually, they'll fall out of solution, but you just got to let it sit. That was a really hard lesson because it was so popular in Kansas. People would just come and buy this.
Yeah, I bet.
So my wife and I going to 2 farmers markets on a Saturday, we'd run out. So we try to hurry up and make another batch and get it on the market, and it would just clog up the filter press and stuff. It was a nightmare to make. Yeah. So this time we just made a conscious decision. We were saying we're going to let it sit for 5 to 6 months and let it clean itself. And I think it works.
Yeah, I think so. It feels like a joyful glass. It is celebratory. It's a beautiful presentation. The color itself is this deep, rich.
I want to say it looks like a Beaujolais without the fanciness of Beaujolais because it's fancy in its own right.
Yeah, sure is.
It has the tanginess that you would find in a cranberry, but it also has the spices as well. So it will throw people for a loop once they try it. But if you keep an open mind, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
12%, I see.
Yeah.
Too. So, again, you would not experience that. And we've been drinking a little bit of mead here now for a while, and I'm not feeling heady. I don't know. I guess it's just a company. I'm feeling kind of good. It's a Friday afternoon. We're meeting at the Stone Cow Brewery in their future biggest cheese facility in New England.
I can't wait to see their stuff at Stop and Shop and Market Basket because I am a cheese head.
What is the temperature that you ferment at?
We ferment at room temperature.
Okay.
We'll probably
You have to.
Yeah.
Is that the way though? Is that what's recommended? Because
No.
Okay. What is the recommended temperature?
I think most people recommend you do it at maybe 59 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
The thing with that is, if you are trying to maintain that constant temperature, you either have to have a very cool basement, or you need to have glycol chillers, and have a double jacketed fermentation vessel. And we don't have that.
Right.
The only thing fancy in our winery is our bright tank that we use to artificially carbonate our carnival rolls. Other than that, we use these large imported from Italy plastic vat tanks. And then we pump it into flex tanks and glass demijohns. And we just let time do its job.
So you're in an old Subway storefront, and he's leaning his head over, putting palm to his head right now, shaking his head. So is this a happening mall? Malls in New England, in case you don't know, if you haven't been here, we've had a number of dead malls. And then in the area where I am, like Hadley, Mass, like a lot of the malls have been revived a bit, but now they're also kind of now closing in on themselves and places are closing. Seniors go walking around in the mall. So you have that?
That sounds like the Emerald Square Mall in the great town of North Attleborough.
I love the name Emerald Square. I mean, you could play with that. That sounds like something from like The Wizard of Oz, the Emerald City.
Coincidentally, Amigo, Kansas, where Highland Community College is located, and the wine incubator, that is Dorothy's hometown.
Oh, no kidding.
There's a Wizard of Oz museum.
Oh, it's
There's an Oz winery. I never thought about that until you just mentioned it.
It's connected.
And now we're in the quote-unquote Emerald Square Mall in southeastern Massachusetts.
Yeah, you're connected. You are connected. It is following. That's a magic, isn't it? The fermentation has that magical piece of somehow colliding our lives in a way that we didn't even expect it, but it's all been bringing us to this one point.
I am going to giggle the entire ride back home thinking about that piece of information.
Yeah, you think about that. You might need a mead called the Emerald something something something.
Yeah, don't give me any ideas because I've had so many ideas.
Tell your wife. I don't want her to not like me because I already like her. I don't want her to not like me. I don't know, but damn.
We might have to incorporate that because
That's fun.
We have an idea. We used to make something with wild blueberries. And I used to use Maine wild blueberries, and we called it Northern Berry Bell. And it was popular. It looked like a red wine, but it was lighter than the hibiscus mead. And I have this crazy idea of co-fermenting pears and quince because I like the talking palms.
I'm so happy to hear that. Do you hear that, you guys? I know you do. I know you do. I know you
The talking palms are great. Oh my gosh. The talking palms are influential because I never knew anything about quinces.
Uh-huh.
And I did some researching, and there's an orchard, I think Allison Orchard in New Hampshire.
Yeah, of course.
They have a small quince orchard, and I told my wife I'd like to co-ferment pears and quince. And if I could find some bitter, sharp pear juice, that would be wonderful. And I'd like to add some wildflower honey to it because perry is underappreciated. I actually didn't learn about perry until I started listening to Cider Chat.
Oh, wow.
And one of the liquor stores in Kansas that sold our products, they had I think it was a British perry. And I would buy it anytime I would make deliveries to their store. It's very underappreciated.
Yeah.
And there's another meadery up in Maine. Oh my gosh, I can't remember it. But I bought his pear mead before and sent it to my wife, and that was good.
Wonderful. Well, we have one last mead here.
Yeah. This one is Atlantic Creole, 100% Massachusetts knotweed honey. And for folks who are not from New England, knotweed is an invasive plant.
Yeah, it sure is.
It's a pain in the neck for a lot of folks here in the region, but it makes a very, very dark brown honey, and I think it's a relative of buckwheat. So if you like buckwheat meads, you may like our knotweed mead. This has a little bit of molasses-like flavor, and this is just 100% honey, water, and yeast. Again, 3 degrees bricks, so it has less sugar than what you would find in farm stand cider that you buy in September and October and November out here in the country. This one you will definitely notice the honey flavor, whereas the other 3
totally different.
oh yeah.
So we have 4 bottles here, and each one is totally freaking different. Wow.
Like I said, it's not overly sweet, but you will notice the honey essence.
Yeah.
Knotweed makes really good honey.
Like you said, it's very invasive. People are pulling it up, and some folks are eating it, and here you are.
Yeah, please stop pulling it up because Massachusetts and New England beekeepers are having issues finding enough food for their bees. So if you're pulling up knotweed, you're harming the food source for local apiaries and stuff. So I understand if you want to clear your property and you don't want it. I understand folks'
Well, there's
decision.
other things to get, honey from, right? I mean, you mentioned buckwheat honey. It's a really deep, rich, dark honey. It stands out on the shelf,
I had the pleasure of having some buckwheat honey from Montana. Oh my gosh. I don't know what they have in the soil in Montana, but man, that stuff was good. And if you taste buckwheat honey from Pennsylvania, it's good, but it's not the same like the buckwheat honey up in Montana and North Dakota. Just like grapes, terroir plays a role.
A big role. Now, how would you describe this?
It's like a hint of molasses.
It's not citrusy at all. You're getting that honey. And knotweed, I mean, I've never drunk
It's
knotweed.
like, for some reason, I'm thinking maple syrup.
Yeah, a little bit of the maple sap. Not boiled yet.
Not boiled, yes.
That's right. That's a good way to describe it.
We used to
Perfect.
make something called Mass Memories, MASS Memories. And it was cranberry blossom honey and Massachusetts maple syrup. But the maple syrup gave it an oak-like flavor because it was boiled and it was concentrated. But this has the maple sap flavor, yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought about it like that.
That's
but
interesting.
people, I remember Mass Memories, cranberry blossom, Massachusetts cranberry blossom is really deep and red and it's very distinctive compared to Wisconsin cranberry blossom honey. And we use Massachusetts maple syrup, and people always ask us, did you put oak in this? Like, no, we don't oak any of our products. But I guess they were tasting the flavors of the tree after being concentrated in the vats, stainless steel vats at the maple syrup places.
These meads are really delicious. You changed my mindset on meads, Eric. I could feel like you're pulling in all of your ancestors and sharing it with all of us. That's a pretty nice gift to give to the world.
You could thank a 98-year-old lady who lives in Dorchester, Massachusetts for it, because that's all her.
Well, and what's her name?
Ina, E-N-A. Ina Depradine is the lady who taught me how to make this. And really, she taught my mom. And my mom, she makes a little small quantity around Christmas, but my mom doesn't drink. So I've taken their recipes for it and tried to make it my own and try to keep the culture alive. One bottle at a time.
Yeah.
Just let folks know we somehow take these very different regions of Massachusetts, southern Louisiana, and northeastern Kansas and try to string them all together. And I think we did okay.
Spot on.
So thank you for the opportunity of talking on this podcast.
Really pleasure, Eric. I look forward to the next time that we're sitting around raising a glass, and I know it won't be too far in the distant future. At the show notes, you could find links to Zydeco Meadery and all the different meads and that special cider that we were tasting with Eric Depradine. You'll also find a link to the apple flower guy, and you'll also see a link to the Patreon page. That is a site that helps keep this podcast rolling out all these different episodes, over 450 episodes and counting, to you for the past 10 years. If you get some good info from Cider Chat, please do consider becoming a patron today. Just search for Cider Chat and Patreon. That's spelled Patreon. And with that, I leave you here. This is Rio Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
Strange apples, bitter sharp. Strange apples, juicy ripe. Bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dop, bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dop. Who wants a tannin balm?
I want a tannin balm.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples,
bittersweet. Strange apples, hanging high. Got them strange apples. Forget the pie. Strange apples, squeeze them tight. Got them strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-da, pop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-da.
Who wants a tannenbaum?
I want a tannin balm.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples. Come and see. Plenty strange apples for you and me. Strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-doo-da, pop.